Welcome students. This course is titled as Apparel Production Management. This course assumes that you are familiar with subjects like production operation management and industrial engineering. The following are the topics that would be covered in apparel production management. Unit 1, Introduction to Production Processes. Unit 2, Productivity. Unit 3, Key Terminologies of Production Management. Unit 4, Manufacturing Processes. Unit 5, WIP and Throughput Time. Unit 6, Understanding Capacity. Unit 7, SMED. And the last and final Unit 8, Line Balancing. Let us start with the first unit, which is the Introduction to Production Processes. Welcome to the unit. In this unit, you will understand the basic concepts of apparel production system. This unit comprises of modules and a final review section that invites you to reflect on what you have learned. The objective here being, by the end of this unit, you would be able to state the apparel market analysis, understand and explain about basic production processes and strategies, describe the apparel production planning and control process. Let us first look into the first module. The first module reviews the challenges of apparel market. Apparel industry has come a long way to be an organized industry from being a mere domestic industry. Starting with the Industrial Revolution, it has gained a state of supremacy with time. High production of wool, cotton and silk all over the world has given a boost to the apparel industry in the past years. Asian countries also industrialized their economies and have taken steps for the growth of their sectors. Countries like Japan, India, Hong Kong and China have become leading producers of apparel because of the availability of cheap labor, which is a very important factor for this industry. Now, the industry has matured enough for growth outside the traditional Western markets. The World Trade Organization, that is the WTO, has taken important steps for development of this sector in 1995. WTO has adopted Agreement on Textiles and Clothing, that is ATC, which provided for removal of quotas on textile and clothing among WTO member countries. This agreement was enforced on the 1st of 2015 January, and all the quotas were abolished. Although high tariffs and quantitative restrictions are imposed by the economically developed countries, the developing countries are increasingly exporting textiles and apparels to developed and other countries. The apparel industry has seen remarkable changes in the past few years. The garment manufacturing industry and the garment companies in developed countries are now always on a lookout for cheap source of garment production. The days are gone when textile and garment industries were concentrated in the consumption hubs of the US, EU, that is European Union, and other developed countries of the world. The clothing wholesale supply is increasing worldwide in all the sectors of the industry, whether it be men's clothing, women's clothing, kids wear, or infant wear. The elimination of global export quota has led to a shift towards low-cost countries having strong and established clothing industries, especially the Asian countries. The global apparel market is valued at $3 trillion and accounts for 2% of the world's gross domestic product, that is GDP. The fashion industry includes many sub-industries such as menswear, women's wear and sportswear and accessories as well. The women's wear industry is valued at $621 billion. The menswear industry is valued at $402 billion. The retail value of the luxury goods market is at $339.4 billion. Kids wear, that is children's wear, has a global retail value at $186 billion. Sports and footwear is valued at $90.4 billion. The bridal wear industry is valued at $57 billion. The number of people employed in the apparel industry is also something we should know about. While in 1990 there were 14.5 million people employed in the apparel industry, by 2014 it is closely doubled to 24.8 million. The total trade of clothing and textiles combined gives us $726 billion. The most traded apparel and textile products are non-knit women's suits, knit western, knit t-shirt and non-knit men's suits. Non-knit women's suits constitute of $54.6 billion. Knit sweaters are at $52.8 billion. Non-knit men's suits at $43.4 billion. Knit t-shirts at $36.9 billion. And the valuation of knit women's suits stands at $28.2 billion. As you can see in this chart, the main production is of women's suits, dresses, skirts and shorts. And the second most produced garments are jerseys, pullovers and cardigans, followed closely by men's suits, jackets and trousers. In fourth position, we have t-shirts, singlets and vests, followed to which we have women's blouses and shirts, which is again followed by men's shirts. The next position, that is the seventh position, we have of overcoats, baby garments, tracksuits, lingerie, and the last and final segment being men's underwears and pajamas. This chart clearly tells us what is the most consumed and the most bought at retail. Thus, we will get to know what is being most produced at the factories. Global garment exports are valued at more than US $310 billion a year, of which the world's top 15 clothing exporters account for more than 80%. China continues to develop its textile and clothing exports despite the reimposition of quotas by the United States, Europe, and some other developing countries till December 2008 as a temporary safeguard measure on exports from China. The gain is due to the strategy of China to divert its clothing wholesale destinations from US and EU, that is European Union, to other Asian countries. Developing countries in Asia continue expanding their textile garment industry due to their very low cost production. Apart from China, the true gainers of the post-quota period are India, Bangladesh, Cambodia, and Vietnam. India is the second most preferred country after China for textile and apparel sourcing. The rise of exports in India is due to several factors like vast sources of raw materials, low labor costs, entrepreneurship, and design skills of Indian traders. Changes in the policies to open up Indian economy to the outside world, etc. Bangladesh has emerged as a key player in RMG sector. Here RMG refers to ready-made garment industry. 85% of its total textile and clothing export earnings come from the apparel industry. The chief factor being this is an abundant place of cheap labor force. Turkey and Brazil are the emerging markets for investment by apparel manufacturers. Also, many apparel manufacturers are investing in North Africa to countries like Ethiopia. In Africa, there are already factories in countries like Bahrain, Jordan. More factories are opening up in Kenya as well. One of the main beneficiaries of the textile and clothing exports is the drop in US imports from China is Vietnam. In the first quarter of 2014, sales of Vietnamese apparel and dresses in the US market were up by over 30%. Cambodia's garment industry is continuing to attract new investors and increase its garment exports. This is due to the European Union and United States restraints on China, and also because of its positive sweatshop-free reputation on labor standards. It is in fact the ninth largest supplier to the American market. Cambodia's garment exports to the European Union are also rising. If we can look at this chart of world map, we can clearly see that most of the exports from Southeast Asia are 48% to US and South America, and intra-Asia exports are at 22%. 30% of the exports are to Europe. Similarly, we can see in the United States imports, the majority of the quantity, that is 76% of imports, are from Southeast Asia and Asia. 17% is from Europe. Omega 3% is from Africa. And 4% is from South America. Similarly, in the European Union's imports, we have 75% of the consumables produced from Asia, 14% by Europe itself, Omega 1% from the United States and South America, and finally 10% from Africa. If we can look at this chart, which is published by the World Trade Organization, we can see the top 10 exporters of clothing, that is apparel, in the year of 2015. The highest exporter is from the country of China. They have exported close to $175 billion. The second exporter is the European Union combined of 28 countries. The second highest in terms from Asia is from Bangladesh, where the export stands at $26 billion. Vietnam at $22 billion. Hong Kong at $18 billion. India at $18 billion. Turkey at $15 billion. Indonesia at $7 billion. Cambodia at $6 billion. And finally, United States of America at $6 billion. If we have a look at it again, we will also note that there is a 6% drop in China's annual export, an 11% drop in European Union's annual export. Bangladesh has increased by a 6%. Vietnam's export has increased by 10%. Hong Kong has dropped by 10%. India has increased by 2%. Turkey has increased and dropped by 9%. Indonesia has dropped by 10%. Cambodia has increased by 8%. And finally, United States stands the same. Now that we have an overview of the top 10 exporters of clothing in 2015, we will now look at the top 10 exporters and importers of clothing in 2015. We've already looked at the exporters. Let us look at the importers. European Union has imported $170 billion plus another $96. United States has imported $97 worth. Japan at $29. Hong Kong has imported $15 billion. Canada has imported $10 billion. Korea $9 billion. Australia $7 billion. China $7 billion. Switzerland stands at $6 billion. And finally, Russian Federation at $6 billion. Let us also have a look at the top 5 upcoming countries in export market. At number 1 we have Bangladesh, as you can see, touching $25 billion. Next we have India, which is going up and down and is in competition with Vietnam. In the 4th place we have Spain. And in the 5th place we have Cambodia. This is the status of the report at 2014. To summarize, the top countries in export include China, Italy, Bangladesh, Vietnam, India, Turkey, Spain, Indonesia, Cambodia, and finally Pakistan. As you know, India is the world's second largest producer of textiles and garments. The domestic textile and apparel industry in India is estimated to reach $100 billion by 2017 and $141 billion by 2021 from $67 billion in 2014. Exports have always been a core feature of India's textile and apparel sector, and its export is expected to increase to $82 billion by 2021 from $40 billion in 2014. India's share of the world's apparel exports stands at 4.5%. It is estimated that due to the increasing shift of apparel and textile production to Asian nations and the deteriorating export competitiveness of China, this figure will grow to 8% by 2020, with a total export value of $82 billion. This growth from 4.5% to 8% of world trade will open up huge potential for Indian players. Now let us have a look at the Indian and worldwide apparel market. In 2007, the worldwide apparel market was worth 345 billion US dollars, and during the last decade the market grew at an average of 8% per annum. India has the potential to benefit significantly from ongoing global trade liberalization in apparel, particularly now that the government of India has deregulated the apparel sector. A recent study of the Indian apparel and textile industry concluded that India has the potential to double its current world market share in apparel during the next 5 years, provided that the apparel sector invests about 16.6 billion US dollars in new production technology. We will now look into the module which discusses the basic production processes. Production system is a system whose function is set to convert a set of inputs into a set of desired outputs. Production system is depicted under with the help of the chart. Examples of input for a company includes land, buildings, machines, labor, capital management, and raw material. Examples of output are goods and services. Production system is the framework within which the production activities of an enterprise takes place. Production is basically a conversion process through which inputs are converted into outputs. An appropriate designing of production system ensures that the coordination of various production activities. There is no single pattern of production system which is universally applicable to all types of production system. It varies from one enterprise to another. As discussed, the following are the basic components of a production system. We have an input, we have a conversion process, and we have an output. Input is basically a resource required for the manufacture of a product or a service. Conversion is a production system that converts inputs, that is material and human resources, into outputs, that is products or services. Under output, it basically defines a direct outcome, that is an actual product or service, or indirect outcome, which would include your taxes, wages, salaries of a production system. Production system is not a single entity. It has various pivotal roles, which includes human resources, products, services, process and technology, quality, operating systems, sourcings, facilities, and capacity. All these combine to form what is called a production system. Now let us try to understand what is production management. Production management involves the managerial decisions regarding design of the product and the design of the production system. That is, determination of production processes and production planning and control. Production control function is to produce two products with minimum total cost in required planned delivery time frame. The efficiency of the production control performance is equal to the precision of time and cost anticipation. Greater the deviation from the scheduled time and cost figure, the poorer the production control performance. Let us just try to understand a simple flow chart wherein we can understand the manufacturing process of apparel. These are the following steps that are generally followed to make any garment. We start with the raw fiber, which is converted to yarn. From yarn, it is converted to a raw fabric, and further down to fabric processing. These 4 steps come under textiles and spinning. Once the fabric is ready, the first step in making a garment would be pattern cutting, sewing and value addition, finishing, which would include your buttoning operations, etc., and finally your ironing and packing. Next comes manufacturing processes. The manufacturing process is a sequence of operations and processes designed to create a specific product. Let us look into 4 basic types of basic production processes. The 4 basic types of basic production processes are intermittent production system, mass production system, mass customization, and continuous production processes. Let us have a look at each of these now. First, we will be looking into intermittent production system. Production is performed on a start and stop basis, such as for the manufacture of made-to-order products. Under this system, the goods may be produced partly for inventory or stock and partly for customer orders. Example would come under components that are made for inventory, but they are combined differently for different customers. Automobile plants, printing presses, electrical good plants are examples of this type of manufacturing system. Intermittent production system can also be used for customized products. Now, let us look into mass production system. Mass production, or as the name goes, flow production, is the production of large amounts of standardized products, including and especially on assembly lines. Some mass production techniques, such as standardized sizes and production lines, predate the Industrial Revolution by many centuries. However, it was not until the introduction of machine tools and techniques to produce interchangeable parts were developed in the mid-19th century that modern mass production was possible. Mass production involves making many copies of the same product very quickly using assembly line techniques to send partially complete products to workers who each work on an individual step rather than having a worker work on a whole product from start to finish. Mass production, although allowing lower prices, does not have to mean low quality production. It was popularized in the 1910s and 1920s by Henry Ford's Ford Motor Company, which introduced electric motors to the then well-known technique of chain or sequential production. This system of manufacturing involved production of many identical parts and their assembly into finished products, which came to be called the American system because it achieved its fullest maturity in the United States. Let us try to understand the assembly line. Though prototypes of the assembly line can be traced to antiquity, the true ancestor of this industrial technique was the 19th century meat packing industry in Cincinnati, Ohio, and in Chicago, where overhead trolleys were employed to convey carcasses from worker to worker. Drawing upon observations of the meat packing industry, the American automobile manufacturer Henry Ford designed an assembly line that began operation in 1913. The result was a remarkable reduction of manufacturing time for magneto flywheels from 20 minutes to just under 5 minutes. Mass production is a way to make many products faster and cheaper. Mass production fueled the Industrial Revolution. It has made many products made available cheaply. Mass production has provided jobs for unskilled laborers. It is involved in change from agrarian to industrial society. Mass production uses many things to create products like system model, standardized parts, interchangeable parts, assembly line, unskilled labor, transportation, and energy. Let us look at the advantages of mass production. The time taken to manufacture a product using mass production is shorter than when using traditional methods. The probability of human error and variation is also reduced, as tasks are predominantly carried out by machinery. One of the other advantages of mass production is a reduction in labor costs. Also, it is directly related to an increased rate of production. While we talk about advantages, we should also be discussing about the disadvantages of mass production. Mass production is inflexible because it is difficult to alter a design or production process after a production line is implemented. All products produced on one production line will be identical or very similar, and introducing variety to satisfy individual tastes is not easy. The startup costs for the machinery can be expensive. Now let us look at the third, which would be the mass customization. Designing, producing and delivering customized products to customers for at or near the cost and convenience of mass produced items. Mass customization combines high production volume with high product variety. The main elements of mass customization are modular product design, modular process design, and agile supply networks. Let us also have a look at continuous production processes. Continuous production processes. A production process such as those used by chemical plants or refineries that runs for very long periods without the start and stop behavior associated with intermittent production is basically continuous production processes. Key features of continuous production processes are enormous capital investments, highly automated facilities, special purpose equipment, high volumes of production, little or no variation in the type of outputs, high product quality. It is used in companies like, for example, petrochemical refineries, soft drink, distilleries, fiber production, paper manufacturing, and power plants, etc. Choice of manufacturing processes depend on the following factors. The first one being volume or variety, capacity of the plant, lead time or throughput time, flexibility and efficiency, WIP, that is work in process, and skill availability. Let us first look into volume or variety. When the volume is low and variety is high, intermittent processes is most suitable. And with the increase in volume and reduction in variety, continuous or assembly line processes become more suitable. The second factor being capacity of the plant. Projected sales volume during forecasting is a key factor to make choice of manufacturing processes. In case of assembly line processes, fixed costs are substantially higher than variable costs. The reverse is true for modular processes. The third factor being lead time or throughput time. Lead time and the level of competition certainly influences the choice of production process. Next comes flexibility and efficiency. The manufacturing process needs to be flexible enough to adapt to variety of products and volume of production at lower costs. The final two factors being WIP, that is the work in process, and finally the skill availability. Skill availability refers to the labor content in and around the area. Hence, it is very important for an entrepreneur to consider all these factors before taking a decision regarding the type of manufacturing process to be adopted. Now, let us move on to the next module, that is production planning and control. Production control's function is to produce products with minimum total costs in the required planned delivery time frame. The production plan should anticipate the progress of the production of any and every individual product from the receipt of raw material to the shipment of the order. Production plan should also permit one to anticipate the itemized and total cost of production and delivering the product. Production control is composed of sequence of the following four activities. First comes analyzing, forecasting, planning, and controlling. Let us first try to understand analyzing. It is the process of determining quality specifications of the product. It provides specifications for elements of production like raw materials, equipment and tools, production personnel that will yield the durability, utility and emotional appeal, that is style factors regarding the garment. The second point being quantitative production capacity of each operation or job or process is analyzed. It determines the anticipated load of production per unit time. The second production control process would be forecasting. Forecasting is the process of estimating the future sales volume, rate of sales, and the rate of delivery. Next comes planning, or say organizing and scheduling. Planning is the activity of organizing the sequence of communications and material processing. Scheduling is the second half of the planning activities. It adds the when to organizing, what and where. The final part of production control being controlling. Controlling is the activity with which the production manager inspects and corrects the execution of the production plan. It is the action that must be taken to change the production plan whenever production is behind the planned schedule because of improper planning, unforeseen emergencies, or unpredicted occurrences. As customer bases grow, there are more and more style variations within the product. Style variation also brings about situations where line should be loaded in hours rather than units. Ever-changing demands make it more difficult for lines to maintain their balance or meet schedules. It becomes apparent that a closer check on production becomes necessary. Today, production control should be responsible for the scheduling, loading, controlling, and reporting of balanced conditions, lines, and the attainment of scheduled completion dates. Factors that determine control procedures are varied and repetitive character of operations, nature of manufacturing, and magnitude of operation. Let us try to understand what are the varied and repetitive character of operations. In general, variety of operations complicates the problem of planning and control, whereas repetitive operations, since they reduce the variety, tend to simplify the problem. There are all sorts of variant between the two extremes. Some of the principal variants are manufacturing to order, which may or may not be repeated at regular intervals. Manufacturing to stock, where products are made up of the parts but processes are not optional. Number of ultimate parts in the product, number of different operations in each part, and the extent to which processes are dependent. Variation in the capacity of machine for different classes of work. Degree of subassembly, and finally lead time. Let us try to understand the nature of manufacturing. Degree to which control is required depends on the type of manufacturing, like we mentioned before, custom manufacturing or stock manufacturing. Next comes magnitude of operation. The scale of operation determines the control required. In small scale enterprise, control is more informal because it is more personal and direct. You've now come to the end of this unit, that is Introduction to Production Processes. You've understood the basic concepts of apparel production system. You have understood the current status of the apparel market, about the various basic production processes and strategies, and finally we have analyzed and reviewed about apparel production planning and control processes. Thank you.